Item number 14, please.
A resolution authorizing and approving participation by the City of Raytown in a joint application to the Missouri Department of Economic Development for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program 3, authorized by the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act.
Again, Ms. Beth Lynn, our Community Development Director.
Good evening again, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. I'm here before you tonight with asking for a resolution of support for us to submit for a grant application for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. This is Program 3 through the Missouri Department of Economic Development. The Board of Aldermen has participated, and the City of Raytown have participated twice before in neighborhood stabilization programs. This one, through round 3, is grant funding for the purpose of purchasing homes within a target area for rehabilitation and/or demolish and rebuild. Once the homes are rehabilitated or rebuilt, the homes would be sold for home ownership. The grant funding could include a gamut of tools in this program that would include everything from perhaps down payment assistance, home ownership classes, possibly lower financing rates, or other tools to make home ownership affordable to a larger target market. There are several differences from the previous programs we participated in and this program. Probably the largest difference is the area of Raytown that is eligible. Previously, when we've talked about this, it's been half of the street for about 2 blocks in the southern portion of the city. And in this particular round of funding, for whatever reason, almost the entire city was eligible. When we met with Mid-American Regional Council staff and the other cities that have eligible areas for this round of funding, Molly McGovern with Mark indicated that really what we wanted to do was make a target area that we thought could compete best in the application funding round. So what we did was worked with Mid-America Regional staff and the maps that are provided by the Housing Urban Development Department in trying to figure out what we think is the best target area that we could make the biggest difference in. The way that this particular round of grant funding is being looked at or evaluated is that HUD provides, based on the amount of homes that are currently owned by a bank or the amount of foreclosures that are started in a particular area that you define, they give it a HUD score or an NSP score, and what we wanted to do was make that area most competitive for the number of homes. We would anticipate in working with Mid-America Regional Council that the application, they've asked the City of Raytown to be the lead applicant because we've participated in this program before and have that experience on staff, especially with John Benson, who's been involved in that process. The other cities that would be involved is the City of Grandview and the City of Sugar Creek at this point. Each city looked at their city in particular for what best suited their needs and identified that target area. Based on the scores that we saw, we've identified most of Ward 3 as our target area, which runs from Blue Ridge Cutoff to Woodson, and then from 59th Street north to 53rd Street. And what it does is based on the information that HUD has about foreclosures and bank-owned properties, it gives you a number of homes that they think that you could target and make a visible difference in those neighborhoods as far as neighborhood stabilization goes. And in this particular area that's identified, it identified 9 homes that if we were able to purchase and either rehabilitate or demolish and rebuild that number of homes, that we can make a visible difference in that target neighborhood. Based on the amount of funding, what we think we are going to request as a group, which is about $2,250,000, we think we could do between 7 and 9 homes in that target area alone. And that would makes our application very, very favorable based on what Molly has seen in the past. Highlighted in your staff report is some of the differences in the past programs and the program that the grant application process we're going through this time. I talked about the eligible areas, also about actually selecting our own target area, and then finally about the way that the program is actually structured. Previous programs required that the house that was purchased be foreclosed on, and this program does not. So if a property comes for sale that meets the criteria where we think that is in significant disrepair, or we think that that particular property is sliding, then we have the opportunity to purchase that property through this program and evaluate it with the help of the grant administrator and the building administrator, either make the determination to rehabilitate it or demolish it and rebuild. When we start to talk about what is entailed in that rehabilitation, we're talking about really making a visible difference in the neighborhood. We're talking about new exterior materials if needed. We're talking about all new appliances to make that home energy efficient. We're talking about a complete instance to be able to make a visible difference in that neighborhood. In some instances, because if things have been removed from the house, sometimes when people get foreclosed on, they rip things out or do damage to the house that really makes it beyond repairable. In those instances, they would be a demolish and rebuilding something to match the neighborhood that's there. This is really the beginning stages of this. The resolution is a resolution of support for us to actually submit the application. So I would be glad to answer any questions if the board members have them at this time.
Questions, Ms. Lynn, Ms. Melson?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt.
Ms. Melson's got the motion to adopt, seconded by Ms. White. We're in discussion. Mr. Van Buskirk.
Well, when a previous program came before us, I opposed it then. And this is a type of scheme that I think we need to run away from, not embrace. The fact that Senator Dodd and Representative Frank's names appear in this act should concern everyone. The fact that HUD is a participant in it should concern us. Those are the same people that were highly involved in the housing debacle that we currently have relative to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that led to the collapse of our housing market. And by placing people into houses who couldn't really afford those houses, and that's exactly what we're going to do here, with low down payment assistance, low financing rates, so on and so forth. You're putting people into houses who are not going to be responsible for those, who are not going to be good property owners, and we have a city full of those types of properties right now that are sitting empty, boarded up. We have to go mow the lawns, and I feel like the same type of thing would probably happen with a majority of these at some point in time, because people are not going to be able to make the payments. They're not going to know what they need to do to maintain those houses, and they're going to have the finances to do it, and eventually we'll have the same type of situation. And the fact is, and I'm sure it'll be argued, well, this is free money, and it's not free money. This is your money, it's my money, it's taxpayers' money, and this is happening nationwide, and I think it's a poor use of taxpayers' money. And I don't think we need to get involved in the housing market. I know we're just going to be administering this, but who owns these properties to start with? These are the people that need to maintain those properties. Someone holds a mortgage on those properties. We need to force those people to take care of the properties that they have and not go in and buy them up with some grant and rehab them in order to go through the same cycle that we've already been through. So I absolutely will not vote for this. I oppose it 100%, and I think it's something we should not be involved in. Thank you.
Mr. Kramer.
Of course, I look forward to the opportunity to go through the process to see where we stand with this situation. Of course, I oppose what Mr. Van Buskirk says. We do have an aging housing stock, which in some instances can make it harder to be able to get somebody into that house that doesn't have the money to do it. But to boldly say that they're not going to be good homeowners is a very, very harsh statement. I don't see how one could make a statement and prejudge someone like that when they don't even know who's going to qualify for that. So I would definitely support this, and I heartily disagree with the statement Mr. Van Buskirk made.
Mr. Azier.
Yeah, we've had a program in the past where we actually receive grants like this and work with the current homeowner to renovate. This is a different program, and how does it differ from that one that we've had in the past?
I assume maybe you're talking about the Mid-American Regional Council, the loan program? Is that what
Right.
That's actually more similar. It's a regular loan to make it's a remodeling loan program where if you make certain improvements to your home, then you go through their loan program in order to get a more competitive rate. This is actually one where if the house would come available, then we would use the federal grant dollars that would come to us to actually purchase the home through the grant organization, and then either rehabilitate it or demolish and rebuild it and then sell it on the market. 25% of the homes would have to go to families that income qualify at a certain rate for the county low to moderate income level. Then 75% would be sold at more similar to a market rate. They do have to go through a rigorous income qualifying. They go through classes on financial counseling and ownership of a home and what that means. They do a lot of work to try and make sure that the home is as energy efficient and affordable as they can make it. So one is where the property owner applies for a loan program, and this is actually where the grant we would purchase the home and demolish or rehabilitate it.
I'm sure this program is not a new program. And previously it was mentioned that it almost sounded like in the previous presentation that this kind of program automatically sets up for failure, where the home is purchased, renovated, and it ends up back in a slum condition. Based upon, your background and your experience in this field, is that true, or is, what is the degree of success in a program like this?
The Neighborhood Stabilization Program, this kind of grant funding, the city has actually participated in previously. We just haven't had the opportunity to have a property purchased within our own city. But in Belton and in Liberty and in Gladstone, they actually have. And they've put them, in Belton, they were demolished and rebuilt, very lovely homes that fit the neighborhood, have new energy efficient appliances, have made a very visible difference from a blighted residential structure to a nice neighbor. In Gladstone, it was a property that was rehabilitated, and they just had an open house. Very good feedback from the city and from the neighborhood that we're excited to see a blighted structure get renovated. So the feedback has been very positive. We think it's a great neighborhood stabilization tool and enabled us to infuse dollars into a neighborhood and try to make a visible difference.
Thank you. I'd like to add that the City of Independence, especially the downtown area, has used this program amazingly to rehabilitate a lot of the very, very, very old homes that now are a very beautiful part of that downtown. Thank you.
Mr. Lightfoot.
So what you're saying is 25% of these houses will have to be sold to people of a very low income level.
They would have to qualify with the county low to moderate income level, yes. And I don't have that number off the top of my head, although oftentimes it would mean people that are currently working but just might work a entry level or that kind of job. So there is a lot of working population that would fit that income qualification level.
And then you're saying 75% of the homes would have to be sold under another stipulation?
Right, they're much more at a market rate. They're at the 120% of the, that particular dollar level is much more of a market rate, like similar to what it would sell as if it would just go on the market on its own today.
So it could sell as if it were just on the market to say
absolutely
anybody, no
right.
certain quality, you don't have to be a certain income level.
Correct.
Low income level to get that.
Correct.
Because I do understand where Mr. Van Buskirk's coming from with the statements that the reason we do have so many houses in foreclosure is because of what has happened over the last 10 years with people being pre-qualified and put into homes that really couldn't handle it, couldn't afford it, and got special needs to get into these houses. So I do totally understand where he's come from, but I do like, the thought to seeing houses taken out of blight, so.
Excuse me, Ms. Melson.
I think one of the things that with the target area that's been stated that is Ward 3 is that it can make a visible difference and have an impact in a large area. You did say there was only about 7 to 9 homes, but still that has an opportunity to make an impact in that area, which we've seen before with some of the improvements in housings, or maybe it's commercial stock, that it's kind of that ripple effect. And so I do hope that we get this and are able to do this as a lead organization and, kind of make that biggest difference in Ward 3.
Ms. Lynn, is there an administrative fee that we will be collecting for administering? So we've got some labor we may put in on this, but no compensation.
Right, if we actually we'll have some hard costs that'll come with it in a single audit if we would be awarded the grant and those kinds of things, but they're reimbursable through the grant.
Okay.
So those administrative expenses, anything that we would have other than Jeremy's staff time and his staff's time, there's an investment there of staff time, but any hard costs can be reimbursed through the grant.
Okay, very good. We've got a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on this item? Mr. Bond.
Yeah, this a similar program that we had participated in about a year and a half ago? It has Raytown would partner with the city of Grandview and Sugar Creek. Wasn't there quite a few other cities that participated before?
Right. As I said, the area that happened before was along 87th Street, and it was only one half of the street and a couple of blocks. And for whatever reason, HUD and the federal government changed what qualifies, like the areas that qualify, like previously Liberty qualified, and previously Gladstone qualified, and they did not qualify through this round of funding. Previously, we only had a few blocks, and now we have almost the entire city.
Okay.
So, yes, this is the same program, although this one actually allows us to purchase any home that would go on the market, not just foreclosures. The previous program had to be a foreclosure.
All right.
Second round, Mr. Van Buskirk.
Were any homes actually foreclosed homes purchased through this program when it was approved previously?
No, because there weren't any foreclosed homes. There was only like maybe 8, 6, how many? I think there's 16. No, how many in our area? There was only like 26 properties that were eligible in our area, and none of those particular 26 went through foreclosure at the time that allowed us to purchase it.
So nothing happened relative to the previous resolution that was passed?
No, we participated, but because we didn't have an eligible structure or property to purchase, we didn't have one in our city.
Again, I just want to remind everyone that this is tax dollars, our tax dollars, that's being invested in homes that actually belong to someone. There is some mortgage holder somewhere that owns those properties, or someone owns those properties, and apparently if they have let them become blighted, and so now they're going to be rewarded by purchasing those homes from them, and we will rehab them and put someone else in them. I think it's a scheme that we should stay away from. Again, thank you.
Ms. White.
There's a wonderful book out called Halfway to Everywhere, I believe, that talks about cities that have reinvented themselves literally, and cities very much like ours where people weren't afraid to participate in programs and stabilize their neighborhoods. This may be tax dollars, but it's also tax dollars that the people in this town have contributed, and they deserve stable neighborhoods, and they deserve to be treated with respect. And I just am appalled that we would make generalizations not only about the people who once lived in those homes, but the people that are going to live in them in the future.
Mr. Mayor, may I reply to that?
Third time, Mr. Van Buskirk.
Thank you. I'm merely basing what I'm stating on the history of what has happened relative to our housing collapse and what's taken place over the past few years. I'm not stating that that would happen with each individual situation, but it has happened. I think all of you are aware of that. You should be aware of that if you're not. If you're not, you've had your head buried in the sand somewhere. Thank you.
That's two insults that have come forward tonight. I also object to the remark that the community is full, our community is full of these houses. I object to that, sir. Further discussion, Mr. Kramer, second time with you.
Yeah, I'll make it real quick. Part of the problem that we've experienced through our community and other communities is not just that people were bad homeowners, but that people lost their jobs through attrition or whatever it may be. Perfectly good people that had perfectly good intentions to take care of these homes, and through unfortunate reasons to make a statement like that, I just, as Ms. White said, I find it appalling. I think it's totally wrong of a leader on this board to make a statement like that. And I wonder in my mind, when you say that they're bad homeowners, what the qualification is for a bad homeowner.
Mr. Mayor, could I reply one more time? I'm appalled to the fact
hold on 1 second here.
I'm appalled that we're
hold on
having
1
personal
second.
attacks.
Sir, you've not been addressed.
Go ahead.
You asked for permission.
Thank you.
This will be the fourth time on this. I'd ask you to make it brief, and we're going to move on to the subject.
Okay. I am appalled that we're having personal attacks here. I did not personally attack anyone with my statements, but I have been attacked by several persons on the council. I don't believe that is correct to do that. I don't think that's within our guidelines, and I'm appalled at that.
Mr. Lightfoot, as long as you don't say appalling, you can be addressed, sir.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to touch on that I believe where Mr. Van Buskirk was coming from was talking about the qualifications to get into a home over the last several years had been very drastically reduced. And in other economic downturns over the last 20, 30 years, there has never been a foreclosure rate even close to what we're experiencing right now. The reason we have that foreclosure rate right now is because of people that didn't make enough money, weren't really qualified, and were able to get into homes that they really couldn't afford. And I believe that's what he's touching on, is the lowering of standards to get someone into the house, not necessarily the individual person or that they're a bad person, but that is why we have the foreclosure rate we have. We had an economic downturn like this 20 years ago. There was not even close to this foreclosure rate, because to get into a house 20 years ago, it took, 20% down payment, not a stated income and zero down. I believe that's what he's touching on.
Mr. Azure.
Yeah, just very quickly, I find it very interesting that we'll be coming up in a few minutes in another item. We'll be giving tax dollars to business that let their property become very dilapidated, and we don't have a problem giving away tax dollars to businesses, but not homeowners. So that's the contrast that I see.
That's not been passed yet, sir. We're still going to discuss that. We have not given tax dollars away.
Call the question.
Call the question.
Question's been called. Mr. Kapke, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Question's been called. We immediately go to a vote on the question.
Go to a vote on the call.
Right. Yes. Question's been called. I'll ask the clerk to call the vote regarding the question being called. I'm sorry? Okay. I'd like to go ahead and ask for a voice vote on that, please. We're calling for the question. That means discussion stops and we move immediately to a vote. That's what we're voting on. Stop discussion. Everybody clear? Call the vote, please.
It would be Alderman Pardue who called the question.
I was a second.
Mr. Hamilton called the question.
First.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Okay.
Yes.
There's no second needed for call the question.
Right.
Okay.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman White? Yes. Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman Azure?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Then we'll call the vote, please, on the item itself.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Alderman Azure?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
No.
Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk,
No.